In the quiet, unassuming town of Maplewood, nestled between rolling green hills and thick forests, life moved at a slow and predictable pace. The townsfolk went about their days with little thought beyond their next meal or weekend plans. Children played in the streets, farmers tended to their crops, and the elderly sat on porches sipping tea and watching the world go by. It was the kind of place where nothing exciting ever seemed to happen. Until one fateful day when the unimaginable changed everything. Ellie Parker, a bright-eyed 9-year-old with a mop of curly brown hair, lived on the outskirts of Maplewood with her grandmother Margaret. Ellie's parents had passed away in a car accident when she was just 5, leaving her in the care of her kind but stern grandmother. Despite the tragedy, Ellie had grown into a curious and resourceful child. She spent most of her free time tinkering with gadgets and machines, often taking apart old radios, clocks, and even her grandmother's toaster to see how they worked. Margaret would scold her lightly, saying, "Ellie, if you break it, you fix it." But deep down, she admired her granddaughter's determination and creativity. One of Ellie's favorite things in the world was an old radio telescope that had belonged to her late grandfather, Henry. It stood in the backyard, rusted and weathered from years of neglect. Though it no longer functioned properly, Ellie loved climbing up to its control panel and pretending she was searching for signs of intelligent life in the universe. Her grandfather had once told her stories about distant galaxies, alien civilizations, and the possibility of finding friends among the stars. Those stories sparked a lifelong fascination within Ellie, and now as she adjusted the dials and peered through the cracked lens, she dreamed of uncovering secrets hidden in the vastness of space. On a chilly autumn evening, as golden leaves swirled in the wind and the sky turned shades of orange and purple, Ellie sat hunched over the telescope, twisting knobs and listening intently to the static crackling through the speakers. She had been working on repairing the device for weeks, piecing together parts scavenged from broken electronics around the house. Tonight, however, something felt different. The usual hiss of white noise was interrupted by a series of sharp beeps and rhythmic tones. At first, Ellie thought it was interference from a nearby power line or maybe a glitch in the equipment. But as she listened closer, her heart began to race. The sounds weren't random. They formed a pattern. Excitedly, Ellie grabbed a notebook and started jotting down the sequence of tones. She replayed the recording multiple times, trying to make sense of what she was hearing. Could this really be a message from outer space? The idea thrilled her, but she also knew it sounded far-fetched. Still, she couldn't ignore the possibility. For hours she stayed glued to the telescope, documenting every detail. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Ellie had pages of notes filled with numbers, symbols, and diagrams. Exhausted but exhilarated, she finally climbed down from the telescope and ran inside to show her grandmother. "Grandma! Grandma!" Ellie called out, bursting through the door with her notebook clutched tightly in her hands. Margaret looked up from her knitting, startled by her granddaughter's sudden entrance. "What is it, dear?" she asked, setting her needles aside. I think I've made contact," Ellie exclaimed, her voice trembling with excitement. She thrust the notebook toward her grandmother, who took it hesitantly. Margaret squinted at the scribbles and sketches, unsure of what she was looking at. "Made contact with what, exactly?" "Aliens," Ellie said, her eyes wide with wonder. "Well, not directly, but I think I picked up a signal. Look." She pointed to a section of the page where she had written out the sequence of tones. "It's not random noise, it's a pattern. And patterns mean communication," Margaret chuckled softly, patting Ellie on the head. "That's quite the imagination you've got there, sweetheart. But aren't you jumping to conclusions? Maybe it's just some satellite or interference." Ellie shook her head stubbornly. "No, Grandma, I'm sure of it. This is real. I can feel it." Determined to prove her point, she dragged her grandmother outside to the telescope. Together, they listened to the mysterious sounds emanating from the speakers. Even Margaret had to admit it did sound unusual. "All right," she said after a moment. "Let's say you're right. What do we do next?" That question lingered in Ellie's mind long after her grandmother returned to the house. What did they do next? She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing. She couldn't give up. Over the next few days, Ellie poured herself into deciphering the signal. She spent hours poring over books about astronomy, mathematics, and cryptography, teaching herself whatever she could. Slowly but surely, pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The signal wasn't just a random collection of tones. It was a language. A complex mathematical language that seemed designed to convey information. Ellie painstakingly translated fragments of it, piecing together words and phrases. Some parts were gibberish, but others hinted at coordinates, warnings, and instructions. One phrase, repeated several times, sent chills down her spine. "Help us." At first, Ellie thought the message might be intended for someone else, perhaps another alien species. But as she continued decoding, she realized the truth. The signal was meant for Earth. Whoever or whatever had sent it was asking for humanity's assistance. The implications were staggering. Was Earth being called upon to join an interstellar alliance? Or was this a trap, a ploy to lure them into danger? Before Ellie could fully process what she had discovered, strange events began unfolding around the world. News reports flooded the airwaves with alarming updates. Unidentified flying objects had appeared in the skies above major cities. Witnesses described massive metallic ships hovering silently, casting eerie shadows over buildings and streets. Governments scrambled to respond, deploying fighter jets and issuing statements urging calm. But the situation quickly spiraled out of control. In Maplewood, panic set in as people gathered in the town square, staring up at the heavens in awe and fear. Ellie watched from her bedroom window, clutching her notebook tightly. She knew the ships were connected to the signal she had intercepted. Something big was about to happen, and somehow she was at the center of it. Despite the chaos outside, Ellie remained focused. She couldn't explain why, but she felt certain that the key to understanding the invasion lay in the message she had decoded. With renewed determination, she dove back into her work, determined to uncover the full meaning behind the cryptic transmission. Little did she know her efforts would soon lead to a discovery that would change the course of history, not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. As the days passed, Ellie's confidence grew. She may have been only 9 years old, but she possessed a brilliance and tenacity that belied her age. Unbeknownst to her, the fate of the world rested on her small shoulders, and though she didn't yet realize the magnitude of her role, one thing was clear: Ellie Parker was destined to do something extraordinary. As the alien ships continued to dominate the skies, fear gripped the hearts of people across the globe. In Maplewood, the once peaceful town now buzzed with tension. Neighbors who had known each other for years exchanged worried glances. Their conversations dominated by one question: what do they want? The massive vessels loomed overhead like mechanical gods, their sleek surfaces reflecting sunlight in eerie flashes. Fighter jets screamed through the air, attempting to confront the invaders. But they were no match for the aliens' advanced technology. One by one, the jets were vaporized in blinding bursts of light, leaving trails of smoke and despair behind. Ellie Parker, however, wasn't thinking about running or hiding. While others panicked, she remained fixated on the notebook filled with her translations of the mysterious signal. She couldn't shake the feeling that the message held the answers humanity so desperately needed. Sitting cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by crumpled papers and half-empty coffee mugs, courtesy of her grandmother, Ellie pored over the fragments she had decoded. The more she studied them, the clearer the picture became. The signal wasn't just a plea for help, it was a warning. The beings who sent it identified themselves as the Veylons, a species enslaved by the very same invaders now threatening Earth. According to the message, these conquerors, known as the Zorathians, were ruthless expansionists, wiping out entire civilizations to claim resources and territory. The Veylons had managed to send out a distress call before being silenced, hoping someone would hear and rise against the Zorathian tyranny. But there was more. Embedded within the transmission were coordinates pointing to hidden locations on Earth, along with cryptic instructions for activating ancient defense systems buried beneath the planet's surface. Ellie's heart raced as she connected the dots. Could it be true? Had Earth's ancestors or perhaps even extraterrestrial allies left behind weapons capable of repelling an invasion? If so, why hadn't anyone discovered them before? The thought both thrilled and terrified her. What if she was wrong? What if this was all some elaborate trick meant to lure humanity into a false sense of security? Still, Ellie knew she couldn't ignore the evidence staring back at her from the pages of her notebook. She had to share her findings. But who would believe a 9-year-old girl? Her first attempt came during breakfast the next morning. Margaret sat at the kitchen table sipping her tea while reading updates about the invasion on her tablet. Ellie slid into the chair opposite her, clutching her notebook nervously. "Grandma," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I think I know how we can fight back." Margaret lowered her glasses and gave Ellie a skeptical look. "Fight back? Against those things up there?" "Ellie, sweetie, you're smart, but this isn't something we can solve with a few equations and diagrams." "But Grandma, listen," Ellie insisted, flipping open her notebook. "This signal, it's from another species called the Valens. They're trapped by the aliens attacking us, and they told us where to find weapons that can stop them." Margaret sighed, rubbing her temples. "Ellie, I'm sure you've worked hard on this, but—" "No, Grandma, please," Ellie interrupted, her eyes brimming with tears. "I'm not making it up. Look at the patterns, the math, it all fits. We have to try." Seeing the desperation in her granddaughter's face, Margaret hesitated. She didn't fully understand the science behind Ellie's work, but she trusted her. After a long pause, she nodded slowly. "All right, Ellie. Let's see what we can do." With Margaret's reluctant support, Ellie decided to take her findings to the local university. It was a bold move, but she figured scientists might take her seriously if she presented her data clearly. Armed with her notebook, a USB drive containing audio recordings of the signal, and her unwavering determination, Ellie and her grandmother made the short drive to Maplewood University. The campus, usually bustling with students and faculty, was eerily quiet. Most people had either fled or stayed indoors, too afraid to venture outside. They found Dr. Emily Carter, an astrophysicist known for her research on extraterrestrial life, holed up in her office. When Margaret explained the situation, Dr. Carter raised an eyebrow but agreed to hear Ellie out. For the next hour, Ellie laid out her discoveries, showing the professor the decoded messages, the mathematical patterns, and the coordinates. At first, Dr. Carter seemed skeptical, occasionally glancing at Margaret as if to confirm whether this was some kind of prank. But as Ellie spoke, her confidence grew. By the end of the presentation, Dr. Carter leaned back in her chair, visibly stunned. This is incredible," she murmured, flipping through the notebook. "If what you're saying is true, and I admit the evidence is compelling, we could be looking at our only chance to survive." Over the next few days, word spread quickly among the scientific community. Ellie's discovery attracted attention from experts around the world, many of whom traveled to Maplewood to verify her work. Teams of researchers collaborated with her, using powerful computers to analyze the signal further. Together they confirmed that the coordinates led to underground bunkers scattered across the globe. These bunkers, buried deep beneath layers of rock and soil, contained dormant star destroyers, massive warships designed to combat threats from beyond Earth's atmosphere. But activating the star destroyers wouldn't be easy. Each bunker required solving intricate puzzles encoded in the alien language Ellie had deciphered. Without her expertise, the process would have been impossible. As the days turned into weeks, Ellie became the linchpin of humanity's last stand. Scientists marveled at her ability to interpret the alien code, often joking that she was smarter than all of them combined. Despite the pressure, Ellie thrived under the challenge, fueled by the knowledge that billions of lives depended on her success. Meanwhile, the Zorathians grew impatient. Their initial show of force had failed to break humanity's spirit, and reports suggested resistance movements were forming in various parts of the world. Determined to crush any opposition, the invaders intensified their attacks. Cities burned, forests were reduced to ash, and rivers ran black with pollution. Yet amidst the devastation, hope flickered like a candle in the wind. People rallied around Ellie's story, drawing strength from the idea that a child could inspire such courage and ingenuity. Back in Maplewood, Ellie faced her own battles. Sleepless nights and endless calculations took a toll on her young body, but she refused to give up. Her grandmother kept a close eye on her, ensuring she ate properly and rested when possible. Margaret often reminded her, "You're doing something extraordinary, Ellie, but don't forget, you're still just a little girl. You need to take care of yourself." Ellie appreciated her grandmother's concern, but her mind was consumed by the task at hand. Every moment counted, and she couldn't afford to slow down. With each puzzle solved, another Star Destroyer came online, its engines roaring to life as it emerged from the earth like a sleeping giant awakened. The sight filled Ellie with awe and pride, though she knew the real test was yet to come. One evening, as the sun set in fiery hues of orange and red, Ellie stood atop a hill overlooking the town. Behind her, scientists worked tirelessly in makeshift command centers, coordinating efforts to prepare for the final confrontation. Above her, the alien fleet hovered ominously, casting long shadows over the land. She felt a strange mix of emotions: fear, excitement, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. Though she was just 9 years old, Ellie understood that the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. As she gazed at the stars twinkling faintly in the distance, Ellie whispered a silent promise to herself. "We're going to win this," she said firmly, "for everyone." Little did she know the greatest challenge and triumph of her life was about to unfold. The days leading up to the final confrontation were a blur of activity. Across the globe, teams of scientists, engineers, and military personnel worked around the clock to prepare the ancient Star Destroyers for battle. Ellie Parker, though exhausted from weeks of relentless effort, remained at the heart of the operation. Her role had evolved from decoding alien signals to actively guiding the activation process for each ship. With every bunker that came online, humanity's chances of survival grew stronger, but so did the tension. The Zorathians weren't idle. Their attacks on Earth intensified, targeting cities, infrastructure, and communication networks in an attempt to cripple any organized resistance. In Maplewood, the once quiet town now resembled a war zone. Streets were lined with makeshift barricades, and residents huddled together in basements or community shelters. Despite the chaos, there was a sense of unity among the people. They rallied behind Ellie, whose story had spread far and wide through news outlets and social media. Posters featuring her face appeared on walls, accompanied by slogans like "Hope starts here" and "Believe in Ellie." For many, she represented more than just a child prodigy. She symbolized resilience, ingenuity, and the belief that even the smallest among them could make a difference. Ellie, however, didn't have time to dwell on her newfound fame. She spent most of her days in a dimly lit command center set up inside one of the university labs. Maps of the world covered the walls, dotted with markers indicating the locations of the underground bunkers. Screens displayed live feeds from various sites where teams worked to activate the Star Destroyers. Dr. Emily Carter supervised the operations alongside Ellie, acting as both mentor and guardian. Margaret Parker rarely left her granddaughter's side, bringing meals and ensuring Ellie took breaks despite her protests. Each bunker presented its own unique challenges. Some required solving complex mathematical equations embedded in the alien code, while others demanded physical adjustments to ancient machinery powered by technology far beyond human understanding. Ellie's sharp mind proved invaluable, but she wasn't alone in her efforts. A team of linguists, mathematicians, and engineers collaborated closely with her, piecing together clues hidden within the signal. Together, they deciphered instructions written in a language alien yet strangely logical, a blend of mathematics, geometry, and symbolic imagery. Despite their progress, setbacks were inevitable. In Siberia, a team encountered a malfunctioning control panel that refused to respond to their inputs. In Australia, seismic activity triggered by the invaders' weapons threatened to collapse a bunker before the Star Destroyer could be fully activated. Back in Maplewood, Ellie faced her own crisis when a critical sequence failed to initiate during a test run. Frustration mounted as hours turned into days without resolution. Scientists debated whether to abandon the site altogether, but Ellie refused to give up. It has to work, she insisted, pacing back and forth in front of the main console. There's something we're missing. Something simple. Dr. Carter placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You've done incredible work already, Ellie. Maybe it's time to step back and let us handle this part. But Ellie shook her head firmly. No, I started this. I need to finish it. Her determination inspired those around her. Engineers double-checked their calculations, technicians re-examined wiring connections, and programmers reviewed lines of code for errors. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ellie noticed a pattern in the data that everyone else had overlooked. It was subtle, a slight variation in the rhythm of the alien tones, but it held the key to unlocking the final sequence. With trembling hands, she entered the corrected input, holding her breath as the system processed the command. A low hum filled the air, growing louder until the entire bunker vibrated. Lights flickered on, illuminating massive chambers housing the Star Destroyer. The ship itself was breathtaking, a sleek metallic behemoth adorned with intricate designs that seemed to pulse with energy. Its engines roared to life, sending shockwaves through the ground as it prepared to ascend. Cheers erupted in the command center as confirmation came through. Another Star Destroyer was ready to join the fight. As more ships came online, humanity's confidence began to rise. News of the Star Destroyers spread rapidly, igniting hope in places where despair had taken root. Resistance fighters armed themselves with whatever weapons they could find, determined to hold off the Zorathians until the Star Destroyers could be deployed. Stories of bravery emerged from every corner of the globe. Ordinary people risking their lives to protect their families, neighbors banding together to defend their communities, and children drawing pictures of Star Destroyers soaring through the skies. But the Zorathians weren't about to surrender. Recognizing the threat posed by the newly awakened fleet, they launched a massive assault aimed at wiping out the remaining bunkers before they could be activated. Cities crumbled under relentless bombardment, forests burned, and rivers ran dry. Millions fled their homes seeking refuge in remote areas untouched by the invasion. Yet even in the face of such devastation, humanity refused to yield. They clung to the hope that Ellie and her team would succeed in turning the tide. Back in Maplewood, Ellie faced her greatest challenge yet. The final bunker, located deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, contained the largest and most powerful Star Destroyer of them all. Activating it required solving a puzzle unlike any they had encountered before. Instead of relying solely on logic and mathematics, the solution involved interpreting abstract symbols that seemed to represent emotions and concepts rather than concrete ideas. Ellie struggled to make sense of them, her frustration mounting with each passing hour. Maybe we're overthinking it, Dr. Carter suggested during a late-night brainstorming session. What if the answer isn't in the details but in the bigger picture? Ellie nodded slowly, considering the possibility. She stepped away from the console and stared at the wall covered in decoded messages and diagrams. Something clicked. The symbols weren't meant to confuse, they were meant to inspire. They represented courage, unity, and sacrifice, the very qualities humanity had demonstrated throughout the invasion. Realizing this, Ellie approached the console with renewed clarity. She entered a series of inputs based not on technical precision, but on the essence of what the symbols conveyed. The room fell silent as the system processed her commands. Then, with a deafening roar, the Star Destroyer surged to life. Its emergence sent tidal waves crashing against nearby shores, but the sight of the colossal vessel rising from the depths filled everyone with awe. It was the final piece of humanity's defense, a weapon capable of matching the Zorathians' firepower. With all the Star Destroyers operational, the stage was set for the ultimate showdown. Ellie stood in the command center, surrounded by monitors displaying live footage of the alien fleet hovering above Earth. The Zorathians had assembled their forces, preparing to unleash their deadliest weapon, a planet-splitting beam designed to fracture Earth's crust and render it uninhabitable. Humanity's last stand was imminent. As the countdown began, Ellie felt a mix of emotions, fear, excitement, and pride. She glanced at her grandmother, who gave her a reassuring smile, then at Dr. Carter, who nodded encouragingly. Outside, the sky darkened as the alien mothership positioned itself for the final attack. The fate of the world rested on the shoulders of a 9-year-old girl who had dared to dream big enough to save it, and in that moment Ellie knew exactly what to do. The air in the command center was thick with tension as Ellie Parker stood before a wall of monitors, displaying real-time footage of the alien fleet. The Zarathian mothership loomed larger than ever, its metallic surface glinting ominously under the dim light of Earth's moon. Below it, smaller ships formed a protective perimeter, their weapons trained on cities and military installations around the globe. Humanity's time was running out. The invaders were preparing to fire their ultimate weapon, a devastating beam capable of tearing apart Earth's crust and rendering the planet uninhabitable. Ellie's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the control panel in front of her. It was a sleek, futuristic interface unlike anything humans had ever seen, designed by an ancient civilization that had anticipated this very moment. Each button and dial corresponded to commands written in the alien language she had spent weeks decoding. Though she had practiced operating the system countless times, nothing could have prepared her for the weight of responsibility she now carried. Her fingers hovered over the controls, trembling slightly, as scientists and engineers watched anxiously from behind her. Dr. Emily Carter stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Ellie's shoulder. "You've got this," she whispered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Just remember what you've learned." Ellie nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. She glanced at her grandmother, who stood near the back of the room, clutching her knitting needles tightly as if they were talismans against fear. Margaret gave her a small, reassuring smile, though tears glistened in her eyes. Ellie turned back to the panel, focusing all her attention on the task ahead. This wasn't just about saving herself or her family. It was about protecting everyone on Earth. She couldn't afford to fail. The first step was coordinating the Star Destroyers. Spread across the globe, these massive vessels represented humanity's last line of defense. Each one had been activated thanks to Ellie's efforts, but bringing them together into a unified force required precise timing and communication. On the central monitor, a map displayed the positions of the Star Destroyers, their locations marked by glowing blue dots. Ellie initiated the command sequence, sending signals through the alien network she had decoded. One by one, the ships responded, aligning themselves between Earth and the Zarathian fleet. As the Star Destroyers moved into position, the aliens took notice. Their ships shifted uneasily, clearly unprepared for such a sudden and unexpected counterattack. For weeks, the Zarathians had assumed humanity was powerless, reduced to cowering beneath their superior technology. Now faced with the sight of Earth's ancient defenses rising from the ground and oceans, they hesitated. But hesitation wouldn't last long. The mothership began charging its planet-splitting beam, emitting a low hum that resonated through the atmosphere like a warning bell. "Ellie, we need to act fast," Dr. Carter urged, pointing to a timer on one of the screens. The countdown had begun. Only 5 minutes remained before the beam would fire. Ellie didn't waste a second. Her hands flew across the control panel, entering commands with practiced precision. The Star Destroyer systems came online, their engines roaring to life as energy coursed through their hulls. Weapon systems powered up, glowing with an otherworldly light that lit up the night sky. From Maplewood to Moscow, from Sydney to Sao Paulo, people emerged from shelters to witness the spectacle. The sight of the Star Destroyers hovering protectively above their cities filled them with a mixture of awe and hope. They knew the battle was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, they believed victory might be possible. Back in the command center, Ellie focused on the next phase of the plan targeting the Zarathian fleet. The Star Destroyers were equipped with advanced weaponry, capable of neutralizing even the most formidable enemy ships. However, using them effectively required solving another puzzle embedded in the alien code. Ellie scanned the instructions, displayed on the monitor, her mind racing to interpret the symbols. Time seemed to slow as she worked, each second stretching into eternity. Sweat dripped down her forehead and her hands trembled, but she refused to give up. Finally, she found the solution. The key lay in synchronizing the Star Destroyer's attacks, creating a web of energy beams that would overwhelm the Zorathian shields. Ellie entered the final sequence, her fingers moving faster than ever before. As she pressed the activation button, a wave of relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. The Star Destroyers unleashed their firepower, sending blinding beams of energy streaking toward the alien fleet. Explosions erupted in the sky as several smaller Zorathian ships were obliterated instantly. Cheers erupted in the command center, but Ellie knew they weren't done yet. The mothership remained intact, its shields holding firm against the barrage. The planet-splitting beam continued to charge, the countdown now at 2 minutes. Ellie clenched her fists, frustration bubbling inside her. "We need more power," she muttered, scanning the control panel for options. Then she saw it. A secondary system labeled with a symbol resembling a sunburst. She recognized it immediately from the alien signal, an overload protocol designed to amplify the Star Destroyer's output beyond their normal limits. But activating the overload came with risks. Pushing the ships past their capacity could cause them to self-destruct, taking chunks of Earth's surface with them if they crashed. Ellie hesitated, weighing the consequences. Was it worth sacrificing everything for a slim chance at victory? Before she could decide, Dr. Carter leaned in, her voice urgent. "Ellie, there's no other way. We have to trust that the builders of these ships accounted for this scenario." Ellie swallowed hard, then nodded. With trembling hands, she initiated the overload protocol. The Star Destroyers vibrated violently as their energy levels surged, their hulls glowing brighter than ever before. The strain was visible on every screen, but the ships held together, for now. Ellie directed the amplified beams toward the mothership, focusing all available power on its core. The Zorathians scrambled to reinforce their shields, but it was too late. The combined assault shattered the protective barrier, exposing the ship's inner workings. With less than 30 seconds left on the countdown, the Star Destroyers delivered the final blow. A concentrated beam of energy struck the mothership's reactor, causing a chain reaction that engulfed the vessel in a massive explosion. The shockwave rippled outward, destroying the remaining Zorathian ships caught in its radius. The planet splitting, beam sputtered and died, leaving Earth safe. For now. In the aftermath, silence fell over the command center. Everyone stared at the monitors in stunned disbelief, watching as debris from the destroyed fleet drifted harmlessly into space. Tears streamed down faces as the reality sank in. They had won. Against all odds, humanity had triumphed over an enemy that had seemed invincible. Ellie slumped into her chair, exhausted but elated. Her grandmother rushed to her side, pulling her into a tight embrace. "You did it, sweetheart," Margaret whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You saved us all." Dr. Carter approached, kneeling beside Ellie. "You're a hero, Ellie. Not just to us, but to the entire world." Ellie shook her head modestly. "I didn't do it alone. Everyone helped. We did it together." Outside, celebrations erupted across the globe. People poured into the streets, cheering and embracing one another under skies illuminated by the fading glow of the Star Destroyers. Fireworks lit up the horizon, and music played as communities came alive with joy and gratitude. In Maplewood, residents gathered in the town square, chanting Ellie's name and hoisting handmade signs in her honor. Though she was just 9 years old, she had become a symbol of hope and resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, miracles could happen. But amidst the jubilation, Ellie felt a profound sense of responsibility. The victory had come at a cost. Cities lay in ruins, millions had lost their homes, and countless lives had been lost. The scars of the invasion would take years to heal. Yet, as she looked up at the stars twinkling in the night sky, Ellie knew the fight wasn't truly over. Somewhere out there, the Valons, the species that had sent the original distress signal, were still enslaved by the Zorathians. And though the immediate threat to Earth had been neutralized, the galaxy remained vast and unpredictable. For now, however, Ellie allowed herself a moment of peace. She climbed onto the roof of the command center, sitting cross-legged as she gazed at the heavens. Her grandfather's old radio telescope stood nearby, its rusted frame silhouetted against the moonlight. She smiled softly, remembering the stories he used to tell her about distant worlds and alien civilizations. Little did he know, his granddaughter would one day play a role in shaping the destiny of the universe. As the first rays of dawn broke, over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Ellie made a silent promise to herself. She would continue exploring, learning, and dreaming big. Because if a curious 9-year-old girl could save the world, then anything was possible. In the days following humanity's miraculous victory, the world began to heal. The alien invasion had left deep scars, cities reduced to rubble, families torn apart, and ecosystems ravaged by the Zorathians' relentless attacks. Yet, amidst the devastation, there was a newfound sense of unity. People from all corners of the globe came together to rebuild, driven by the knowledge that they had faced extinction and emerged victorious. At the heart of this global effort stood Ellie Parker, the 9-year-old girl whose brilliance and courage had saved the planet. Ellie quickly became an international icon. News outlets dubbed her the girl who saved Earth, and her face appeared on magazine covers, billboards, and television screens worldwide. Leaders from every nation thanked her personally, presenting her with medals and honors during lavish ceremonies. Despite the attention, Ellie remained humble, often deflecting praise onto the scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens who had supported her efforts. To her, the real heroes were the millions of people who had refused to give up even when hope seemed lost. Back in Maplewood, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after such an extraordinary event. The townsfolk celebrated Ellie's achievements with parades, speeches, and a mural painted on the side of the local library, depicting her standing beside a star destroyer. Margaret watched proudly as her granddaughter navigated the whirlwind of fame, ensuring she stayed grounded and focused on what mattered most: learning and discovery. Ellie, however, wasn't content to rest on her laurels. While others marveled at her accomplishments, she couldn't stop thinking about the bigger picture. The Valens, the enslaved species that had sent the original distress signal, were still out there, trapped under Zorathian rule. Though the immediate threat to Earth had been neutralized, Ellie knew their struggle wasn't over. Humanity had uncovered ancient weapons and technologies capable of defending itself, but the galaxy remained vast and full of mysteries. If Earth was to survive future challenges, it needed to prepare, and Ellie wanted to be part of that preparation. With the help of Dr. Emily Carter and other scientists, Ellie launched an initiative called Project Horizon. Its mission was twofold: to study the alien technology recovered from the star destroyers and to search for signs of intelligent life beyond Earth. Funding poured in from governments, private donors, and corporations eager to support the cause. Laboratories sprang up across the globe, staffed by experts in fields ranging from astrophysics to linguistics. Ellie, though still a child, served as the project's honorary director, offering insights based on her experience decoding the alien signal. Her work took her far beyond Maplewood. She traveled to research facilities in Europe, Asia, and Africa, collaborating with some of the brightest minds on the planet. Wherever she went, crowds gathered to catch a glimpse of the young prodigy. Children lined up to meet her, inspired by her story and eager to ask questions about science and space exploration. Ellie encouraged them to dream big, reminding them that curiosity and determination could lead to incredible discoveries. "If I can do it," she often said, "so can you." But Ellie's journey wasn't without challenges. The weight of responsibility sometimes overwhelmed her, especially when she thought about the lives lost during the invasion. Nights were the hardest. She would lie awake, replaying moments from the battle in her mind. What if she had made a mistake? What if the star destroyers hadn't worked? These thoughts haunted her, but Margaret helped her cope, teaching her the importance of resilience and self-compassion. "You did your best, Ellie," her grandmother would say, "and your best was more than enough." Despite the emotional toll, Ellie found solace in her work. Each day brought new opportunities to learn and grow. She spent hours poring over data collected from the Star Destroyers, uncovering secrets about their creators and the civilizations that had built them. The ships were marvels of engineering, combining advanced physics with organic materials that seemed almost alive. Researchers theorized that the vessels might have been designed not just for war, but also for exploration and diplomacy. This revelation sparked debates about humanity's role in the cosmos. Should Earth focus solely on defense, or should it reach out to other species, forging alliances and sharing knowledge? Ellie believed in the latter. Inspired by the Vaylans' bravery in sending a distress call, she advocated for peaceful cooperation rather than isolation. "We're not alone in the universe," she told a packed auditorium during one of her speeches, "and we shouldn't act like it. Imagine what we could achieve if we worked together, not just as humans but as part of something greater." Her words resonated deeply, sparking movements aimed at fostering interstellar diplomacy. Scientists proposed building communication, arrays capable of sending messages to distant stars, while educators developed curricula focused on astrobiology and extraterrestrial cultures. Ellie herself became a bridge between generations, inspiring both adults and children to think beyond Earth's boundaries. As years passed, Ellie grew into a teenager, her passion for discovery undiminished. By the age of 16, she had published groundbreaking papers on alien linguistics and co-developed algorithms for detecting exoplanets. Her contributions earned her invitations to prestigious institutions, including NASA and the European Space Agency. Yet, no matter how far she traveled or how much recognition she received, she always returned to Maplewood, where her journey had begun. One crisp autumn evening, nearly a decade after the invasion, Ellie stood once again beneath her grandfather's old radio telescope. It had been restored to working condition thanks to funding from Project Horizon, and now served as a training tool for aspiring astronomers. As she adjusted the dials, listening to the familiar crackle of static, she felt a pang of nostalgia. So much had changed since that fateful night when she first intercepted the alien signal. Back then, she had been a curious child dreaming of the stars. Now, she was a leader shaping humanity's place among them. Suddenly, the static gave way to a series of tones, familiar yet different from the ones she had decoded years ago. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the pattern. It was the Vaylans. They were reaching out again, this time not for help, but to express gratitude. Their message was brief but profound. "Thank you. Together, we will build a brighter future." Tears welled up in Ellie's eyes as she recorded the transmission. For so long she had wondered whether her efforts had truly made a difference. Now she had her answer. The Vaylans were free, their oppressors defeated, and Earth had taken its first steps toward becoming a galactic partner. Word of the new message spread quickly, reigniting public interest in space exploration. Governments pledged additional resources to Project Horizon, and plans were drawn up for humanity's first interstellar mission. Ellie, now a respected figure in the scientific community, played a key role in designing the expedition. Her vision extended beyond mere exploration. She dreamed of establishing lasting relationships with other species, creating a network of cooperation and mutual understanding. On the eve of the mission's launch, Ellie addressed a global audience from the command center in Maplewood. Behind her, massive screens displayed images of the Star Destroyers, now repurposed as exploratory vessels. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter," she said, her voice steady and confident. "A chapter defined not by fear or conflict, but by hope and collaboration. We've proven that we can overcome even the greatest challenges when we work together. Let's carry that spirit forward, not just within our world, but beyond it." As rockets soared into the sky, carrying humanity's ambassadors to the stars, Ellie watched with a mixture of pride and wonder. She thought back to her childhood dreams of finding friends among the stars, and realized she had done far more than that. She had helped humanity take its rightful place in the universe. Though the road ahead would undoubtedly be filled with challenges, Ellie faced it with unwavering optimism. After all, she had already shown the world that anything was possible, even the impossible. And as long as there were curious minds willing to dream big, the future would always hold promise.